All right, ladies and gentlemen, I think we're live. I'm still trying to figure out this new Facebook Live interface. Anyway, welcome to We Ain't Got No Histories post-match, not live. Post-match plus 12 hours. My name is David, and we'll be here for probably about 30 to 40 to 50 minutes, talking a little bit about Chelsea's 4-0 win over Qarabag last night or earlier today, depending on your time zone. This is a slightly different time to do this for me, mostly because today here in this part of the world, it is, it's fairly late for me, 10:20, although I tend to stay up pretty late. But tomorrow for me, for here in the U.S., is Thanksgiving, so a lot of that is, family time, etc., all that good stuff. So probably won't have too much time for all this kind of stuff. Have to hang out, eat some turkey, all that good stuff that goes along with this quote unquote holiday. Prepare for the big shopping day the day after, of course. But anyway, the point isn't to talk about Thanksgiving. The point is to talk about Chelsea Football Club and our second successive 4-0 win, this time over Qarabag, once again away from home. So that's, if you're keeping track, Antonio Conte's beard has now been worth for 2 4-0 wins. So whatever the reason he is growing it is working out pretty well, I'd say. If we can keep going with a 4-0 on the weekend against Liverpool, I think we're gonna have to ensure that he never cuts that beard ever again. From the reports I've seen, he's been a little uncomfortable with it. It's apparently in the scratchy stage. I couldn't possibly tell you because this is about the longest I've ever been able to grow anything. So we'll see how this works out. Yeah, he says the reason he started growing it is his wife asked him to do it. If the wife asks you, then you might as well try it and see how it works out. We'll see how long he keeps it. But of course, he did say, jokingly or not, that as long as Chelsea keep winning, he's going to he's going to keep growing that beard. So as long as we keep winning, there's no excuses. So anyway, enough talk about the beard. As much as it is awesome, and hopefully getting better by the day. So Chelsea travel 4,000 kilometers or 3,000 miles, depending on what you prefer, as far as your units go, to Baku, Azerbaijan, to play Qarabag. It's a team we beat 6-0 back in September at Stamford Bridge. But since then, they had produced several good results, including back-to-back draws against Atletico Madrid and a very close loss to Roma at home, 2-1 it was. Quick question about, am I British or American? I'm definitely not British, as you might be able to tell by the accent. I've lived in the U.S. for over 20 years now, so that's where the accent is. I'm definitely not Canadian. No, I'm originally from a country called Slovakia, so look it up. But anyway, so Qarabag, we didn't think too much of them, obviously, because we beat them 6-0 back in September. But they've been playing pretty well, and they're of course like back to back Azerbaijani champions. They're like the pride and joy of the nation. As you could tell by the crowd that was in the stadium that it was very much a national pride thing. A lot of flags, all that stuff. So this is a big occasion for them, obviously, and yeah, for some reason they can't seem to really play well against Chelsea at all. So we've made it now 10 goals in 2 games. They've conceded 3 total in the other 3 games they've played. So I don't know what it is. Today we probably did get a bit lucky. Originally the Facebook Live, these videos I try to do them right after a game, but today it didn't quite work out. It's one of those. It's a strange week here in the States, but yeah, I think we started the game pretty evenly, and they worked the first two good chances of the game. And there's probably a parallel universe where either the shot that Zappacosta created by a really bad turnover just outside the penalty area, and then the shot that came off the crossbar. If either of those go in, yeah, we're probably looking at a different score line, but that tends to be how just things go in football. Each small decision or each small event can have a pretty large repercussion as the minutes go along, because each minute builds on the previous one. So it there's both of those shots. Early chances were for Michel, who's the only person we probably knew from the lineup. He used to play for Birmingham City back in the day, like 8 years ago, and he even played against Chelsea that one time as a substitute in a 3-0 loss. So he was playing midfield for them alongside probably their best player, some guy named Richard Almeida, who was pretty good. Their lone striker was a South African international called Dino Ndlovu. And that's about sums up the people that I knew or have deemed worth remembering. And they had a captain called Sadikov or something like that, and he will be a crucial player later in about 15 minutes game time. Chelsea were back in a 3-4-3. I think it was mostly out of circumstance rather than what Conte would have ideally liked to do. I'm pretty sure from as far as I can tell, we're pretty much all in on the 3-5-2 these days. But we clearly wanted to give Morata a rest, and Batshuayi was injured, so we didn't have a striker to play the main striker in a 3-5-2. So we had to revert to the 3-4-3 with the three smalls, Pedro, Hazard, and Willian up top, Conte and Fabregas in the middle, Alonso, who continues to play every single minute of big crucial games. There was an interview with him before the game where he says, sometimes I get tired, but I am 100% for each game, he insisted. And Zappacosta continued to play the right wing back with Moses still injured. And then the back three had a bit of rotation with Rudiger and David Luiz coming in. Azpilicueta, of course, playing as he always does. Azpilicueta and Conte are basically two cyborgs, and they never get tired. Sometimes they do, but let's just go with they never get tired. Good to see David Luiz back in the lineup. Yeah, it's one of those where, if he doesn't start, then it's a big crisis. But he starts, then it seems like perhaps emotions have been smoothed over and, cooler heads have prevailed, etc., etc. I'm actually worried about Alonso in the left wing back position, says Anirban. Yeah, and I think we all should be worried about Alonso on the left wing back, not so much because he is bad. I mean, there are opinions out there for there are people who don't rate Alonso, obviously, but we should be worried about him because he absolutely has nobody to back him up. In today, Kennedy was even injured. Not that he would ever play. So if anything happens to Alonso, I'm not really sure what we would do. I mean, losing Conte for a month was a big problem, but at least we have somebody who theoretically can play midfield. Not like Conte, obviously, but at least somebody who can put some bodies in there. If Alonso gets hurt, we got nothing. We have Kennedy, who is not really a wing back and is injured these days. Today it was Azpilicueta who went out to the left wing just because Azpilicueta can play just about any position. But that's not an ideal solution, and Azpilicueta needs to be in the back three really as our ideal lineup. Baba Rahman is he's still coming back from his ACL injury, and he's not registered to play really in either the Premier League or the Champions League until possibly in January, at which point we might actually loan him out because he really needs game time to get up to speed. I think we can keep him around, I suppose, and that's probably the most ideal solution at the moment, unless we're able to secure a new signing for a left wing back. But that's not really, it doesn't seem to be really our style these days. We don't really do business in January. And yeah, Mike saying Baba will go back to Schalke. The Germans, they were in on him for in the summer already, and I think they wanted to take him on loan again, and then they saw that he was not really making progress as expected in his recovery from the ACL, so they opted against it. So yeah, he's Baba Rahman has been one of the non-lucky ones in being unable to come back from a torn ACL, unlike Ibrahimovic, who apparently came back in like 6 months, which is pretty crazy. But yeah, and then we can play somebody like Pedro. Yeah, there's some talk about Dujon Sterling, the youngster who was on the bench but didn't actually play. Yeah, theoretically he could play left back as well, but I don't know. I don't really see Conte trusting Dujon Sterling at the moment to play any sort of minutes. I mean, as it was pointed out, we were up 4-0 with 10 minutes to go, or 5 minutes to go, or whatever it was, and we put on Drinkwater instead of Sterling and put on Cahill instead of Sterling. So yeah, I don't think old Dujon is going to be featuring anytime soon. Ibrahimovic said Lions don't take as much time to recover as humans. Well, good for him, I guess. It's all about confidence. If he can sell it. Yeah, Sterling is right-footed, but he's played both flanks in the youth team, and he's even played the center back at times. So he's certainly versatile enough, and he can play left wing back just like Moses did in preseason at times. But the point being, we don't really have a natural or available backup for Alonso. So yeah, we can only hope that he doesn't get hurt or injured or fall drastically out of form. It was good to see him get a chance to get an early rest today. He was withdrawn before the hour mark, so that was good to see. Hazard and Conte also got a bit of rest as the game wore on. So that was good. What of Musonda? I'm not seeing. Charlie Musonda, if we are to believe the coach, is injured. There are some rumors that it's more of injured rather than actually injured, but they're saying there's a knee problem, which isn't the first time really. It's this year, 2017, has been like basically stop and start for Musonda all season, all year, all calendar year, really since January. He's been hurt multiple times. Usually, right when the chance would be to rotate in and maybe get a few minutes, and then he posts stuff on Instagram, and then he deletes it on Instagram, and it's a whole cycle that repeats. And then Then he looks disgruntled, then he looks happy again. I don't know. That's life with Musonda right there. Anyone of the Lone Army who plays left back? Yeah, the big the name that comes to my mind is Jay Da Silva, who is how old is he? He's in early 20s. He's not very old at all. And if that, he might not even be in 20s. Maybe I should look it up before I say anything. But he's actually rated pretty high. The one concern about Da Silva in the youth team was that he is tiny. I'd say shorter than Hazard, Pedro, all those guys. And I mean, it's not really a big problem, especially if you play wingback instead of actual, fullback. But we're used to seemingly used to strong and tall wingbacks. Like Alonso's pretty tall, and that serves us well on set pieces. and long goal kicks and stuff like that. Same with Zappacosta, who's pretty tall. Moses isn't that tall, but he's at least strong. Okay, so Da Silva is 19. Resident looked it up. Thank you for that. Yeah, I didn't think 21 didn't sound right because he was like 17 2 years ago when what was it? Ian Wright or somebody was like, we should call up Jay Da Silva. He's the best left wing back in all of England, which is saying probably going a little too overboard. But yeah, Da Silva is a big prospect, I think. He is at Charlton, I want to say, for the second season in a row, and he's doing pretty well, getting minutes there. So it's certainly an option, but I'm not really hearing any sort of rumors along those lines. You know, when we recalled Ake last season, there's at least some rumors about this, right? As in the months leading up to January, there were stories that we would recall him, or at least he was asked about this possibility. I haven't heard anything about Da Silva, so maybe this is not an option. I'm not sure, but I would certainly think Da Silva could do a better job than Kennedy. Not that I don't particularly dislike Kennedy, I just don't think he's a wing back at all. He needs to be playing up front as even a forward or one of the wingers. So it's like Chris Sutton saying Loftus-Cheek is better than Fabregas. I think if there's one thing we learned this season is that you should not listen to what Chris Sutton says ever. It's just a rule. If he says anything, just ignore it, because he's trying very hard to make a name for himself, I think, in punditry, which, good for him. But I still remember him as the guy who scored like one goal for Chelsea. So good job, Chris Sutton. His punditry is about as good as his Chelsea career, which is to say, not very good at all. Okay, who could replace Courtois if he leaves after his contract ends? Yeah, so there's a concern for you right there, is the Courtois contract situation. Say that fast a few times. The Courtois contract situation is suddenly not looking as rosy as it did, just because he's entering the final 18 months, and there are some. So the first initial report was that he's okay. There's an interview with him. He was saying something like, "Oh, it's fine. We're concentrating on the season. We're focusing on whatever, getting winning, and we'll talk about this at the end of the season." And then a few hours later, reports out of Belgium were saying that it's not that nice. The situation is, what it is actually is that Courtois rejected an offer in May for an extension. And then over the summer, when there were supposed rumors that we would continue talks, those talks were delayed or shelved or whatever. And that's where we are now. Now, whether that's those rejection has anything to do with his supposed demands to get up to 200,000 a week, which is what De Gea gets paid at Manchester United, apparently. Which, I mean, if you ask me, pay the man, whatever. If, even if you say De Gea is better, which he might be, I don't particularly care, whatever. Courtois is easily top 2-3 in the league. If he wants to get paid as much as the best players in the league do, it's fine by me. Just because it's I'd rather not face the uncertainty of trying to get somebody in who's at least as good as Courtois, or at least getting very close. There's a couple names people are commenting. Jan Oblak, who's Courtois' replacement at Atletico, he's obviously very good. And if you ask Simeone, he'll tell you that Oblak is better than Courtois was. But, we should remember that Simeone is Oblak's current coach, so obviously he'll talk him up a little bit. Bernd Leno is Mike's suggestion, and Leno, we might remember, used to play he might still play for Bayer Leverkusen, and I think it was his Champions League debut against us when he just absolutely he turned into one of those FIFA Football Manager super keepers against us. I think this was back in like the AVB days. Bernd Leno, I wonder how, that's when he was like 17. So that guy's been around for a while. And yeah, Leno, Oblak, these are obviously some good young goalkeepers. Whoever that guy at Benfica is, who had those good games, and then these really bad moments against Manchester United just over the last couple months. He's obviously pretty good. So I'm just, there's always replacements. There's always the next big thing. But I don't know. To me, it would be a lot simpler just to give Courtois the money and call it good. It's the succession plan from Cudicini to Cech to Courtois. Beyond just the fact that they all start with the letter C, has worked out pretty well, I'd say. 10 years with Cech was pretty great. And now we could easily do 10 years with Courtois if things work out. So I'm kind of hopeful that this is all just little negotiating tactics or whatever. But it's certainly a situation to be concerned about, especially if Courtois gets to the end of the season without a contract. Then he'll be entering the final year, and then we're looking a bit like Arsenal with Alexis and Ozil and Ramsey and all these guys who are in the final year of the contract. And that's not a good place to be. Even if that's how football's trending these days, more player power, less club control, etc., etc. It behooves players to sign short-term contracts and control their own futures. But don't tell them that. And yeah, it's Courtois is entering final 18 months for Hazard. He's entering the last 2.5 years, so he's basically halfway through his 5-year deal that he signed 2.5 years ago. And so for him, he obviously would want more than 200k a week because that's what he gets paid now. He probably wants more, closer to 300. But just like with Courtois, this is the time to pay the man. He is 26, possibly 27. I need to look up these ages before I talk about them. But he's in the prime of his career. If we go just by rule of thumb, if he's ever going to leave for Real Madrid, this is it. This is the time he would leave. So we need to pay him and ensure that he stays with us. Or Real Madrid just need to fire Zidane pretty quickly, and then those stories can end. Actually, there was just before I started this video, I saw some quotes from Hazard that he apparently said to Canal Plus in France. And he says, "I am always very fine at this club. I still have 2 years of contract left. When I feel the desire to leave, I'll leave. But for now, I'm a Blue." Hazard always says this, "for now," and so everybody freaks out. But I mean, that's standard contract talk. You really can't commit 100% to anything, especially not these days. Hazard continues, says, "We know the admiration that I have for Real, but I'm at Chelsea. Every year, things were said about me, but I stayed. When I was at Lille, I was announced in Paris, but I stayed. And in Chelsea, people always say that I'm leaving, but I'm still here." Well, there you go. Hazard says he's possibly tired of all this nonsense. Chances of Hazard staying with us for his entire career. I think if he signs this deal in the next 6 months or so, if he signs on for another 5 years, I think he will basically stay with us as long as he wants, and retire, possibly even retire as a Chelsea legend in his mid to late 30s. Wouldn't that be nice? Yeah, I mean, this is the time. This would be the time for him to make that final move, right? I mean, basically on day 2 when he signed with Chelsea, there was already a rumor that he's just using the club as a stepping stone to get to Real Madrid. And as he was just saying now, since then, every day there's been rumors, or every month, every transfer window, there's always rumors of him going, and he's not going anywhere. Hasn't gone anywhere so far. I think if he stays now, I think this. I mean, at this point, you're, as an attacking player, as a creative, flair-based, that sort of player, once you hit your late 20s, early 30s, unless you're Messi, I guess, you know, there's always going to be somebody younger and better than you coming along, more attractive. I mean, you know, if Real want to continue with their Galactico thing, you know, signing a 30-year-old Hazard is not exactly what the doctor ordered for them. They would need to go after somebody like, I don't know, Pulisic or one of that. That would be interesting. You know, the next Mbappe, all these guys, or what PSG are doing now. But yeah, for us, if Hazard does leave, as Binay says, it will be very hard to replace him. Yeah, certainly, you know, Hazard may not be the best player in the world, but he is our Messi. He's our Ronaldo. So yeah, we've built a team around him since 2012. Even if Mourinho for a while insisted on building it around Oscar, you know, the attack's always been built around Hazard, and when he plays well, it's almost always a good day for us. What about William and David Luiz? Says, go cool. Well, those are certainly more or less clear cut, I'd say, from where I'm standing. I could very easily see David Luiz's situation turning into this year's Costa situation. You know, it's began the same exact way. You know, I can't wait for the January blazing row. There'll be a big bid for Luiz, and somebody will say, go to China, or something like that, even though China doesn't do that anymore because of their financial restrictions. But yeah, possibly David Luiz. I mean, he is going to be 31, so it's even just in a natural order of natural football order. Once you hit your 30s, you know, time's ticking quickly away. And with somebody like Christensen already proving capable of organizing and leading the defense from the middle, others like Zuma, who's doing well at Stoke and could easily come back and slot into a back three, Rudiger, who is in his early 20s and proving to have adapted pretty quickly to the Premier League and playing, you know, either left side or right side, and possibly even as a wing back. So yeah, I think we can safely assume that Christensen has replaced David Luiz as first choice, which is probably not something that too many people would have bet on. I know I certainly wouldn't have bet on Christensen doing that already, and we're in November. So, you know, for 3 months into the season, the young 21-year-old, I mean, certainly he played plenty at Borussia Mönchengladbach. But, you know, David Luiz was basically talked up as the best defender in the world, certainly by Conte, saying at this time last year, he had the personality of like a Bonucci with the aggression and the strength of a Bazzagli. So, you know, for Conte, this was a big deal. He talked about developing David Luiz into the best defender in the world, and last season, he certainly, I'm sure people will disagree, but he certainly impressed a lot of people and changed a lot of minds. You know, there was quite a bit of stories, or quite a few stories about like Gary Neville, who famously, you know, said David Luiz is like a 10-year-old playing on a PlayStation. You know, he went back on those words and said, you know, this is the new David Luiz. He's much more mature, much more under control. He doesn't do stupid things anymore. And here we are again. Good old David Luiz. You know, can't teach an old dog new tricks, as they say. In a way, David Luiz will always be David Luiz. But in a way, that's what makes us love him. At least that's what makes me love him. And yeah, hopefully he stays for a long time. I mean, he only signed, was it a 4-year contract? So he will only have 2 years left on his contract after this season. and that's 2 years is usually decision time. Although he is over 30, so it's not like we can offer him an extension. Yeah, it's David Luiz's situation is something to watch for sure, and just about the same thing goes for Willian. I think for Willian, mostly it's because today's start was only like his third in the last, I don't know, a dozen games or so. And he really hasn't been first choice for over a year now. When Conte first came in at the start of last season, Willian was playing. He was first choice right wing back, as he had been since 2013, so 3 seasons. And then his mother unfortunately passed away, so he had to take a bereavement leave. And during that time, we switched to the 3-4-3, and Pedro came in and suddenly was a revelation, scoring goals, linking up well with Hazard and Costa at the time. So by the time Willian came back from Brazil and started training with the team again, he couldn't displace Pedro anymore. And that basically stayed that way through the whole season, and began this season like that as well. So I'm sure for Willian, this is not necessarily an ideal situation. He did supposedly reject a chance to join Manchester United over the summer, but his contract's also running down. He's getting up there in age, just like Pedro, just like David Luiz, just like Cahill, if we're looking at other players. If we're going for it's kind of an extended couple-year transition. Conte talks about building a team for the future, not just for the season. Our signings tend to be early 20s, the big signings. I mean, we look at somebody like Bakayoko, who's 22, Morata, 24, Batshuayi was 23 when he signed him. He's 24 now. Rudiger's 24, I think. Zappacosta is pretty young as well. Alonso was early 20s. Conte is mid 20s. Hazard is mid 20s. So that's the core of the team you're building. And so the veteran players like David Luiz and Cahill and Willian and Pedro, even Fabregas, although that's a slightly different situation. All these guys. If you're looking at changes coming in the future, those are the guys you'd have to look at who might be first out the door. Fabregas seems to be the one exception to this. Not sure whatever he poured into Conte's tea over the last year or so, but he's essentially convinced the coach that he's undroppable, and so he plays every game. So there you go. There is hope for life after 30. Here's Cesc Fabregas to prove you wrong. But all the other. And I think part of that is also Fabregas isn't a huge contract. It's either him or Hazard who are the highest paid players. There's only the two highest paid players at Chelsea. Depending on who I ask, it's either Fabregas who's the highest paid or Hazard who's the highest paid. And certainly Fabregas isn't going to get that sort of money anywhere else at the moment. So obviously he's not looking to leave. Plus he's playing all the time now, so he loves it in London. It's perfect. It's a perfect life from Cesc. Musonda should learn from Cesc. I think Musonda would do well to look at a lot of the older players in the squad. Clearly the youngster thinks quite highly of himself. A lot of other people think highly of himself or of him as well. But we look at somebody like Courtois, who played 3 seasons at Atletico before coming back to Chelsea and getting reintegrated from the loan army. We look at somebody like Christensen, who played 2 seasons and was a first choice player for 2 years in Germany before coming back and now winning the job over David Luiz. If that's the standard you need to be able to come back from loan and become part of the first team, Musonda's credentials are nowhere near. He had maybe 6 months at Betis when he was kind of mostly a first choice player. And then he went back there for a second season and he wasn't. So, and then he got hurt a lot. He hasn't really played for like 12 months. I mean, it's a bit harsh and a bit rough, but I don't know. It doesn't really have that much of a claim, really, to get too upset about it. He's it's a bit of a catch-22, or like he needs chances, but we can't really afford to give him chances, so doesn't have chances to prove himself, etc. The usual conundrum, and he seems to be the sort of player where if we try to send him out on loan again, he's just going to be like, yeah, I'm out. Thanks, but no thanks. I'm going to go to Liverpool and sit on their bench instead. Let's see. Sure, there's a buyback clause in both of. I missed who we're talking about. Traore. As far as I know, the buyback on Bertrand Traore's contract is an unofficial one because the French FA regulations do not allow for buyback clauses. But I think just like they're saying Manchester United had one for Memphis, there is like a gentleman's agreement between Lyon and Chelsea, like a side deal, side contract, unenforceable, but it is there supposedly. Reports differ. There are multiple reports that say there's no buyback deal. There are some that say there is one. And it's kind of the same for Chalobah, I'm assuming, is the other player that was being talked about at Watford. And the thing that speaks about it, that kind of supports a buyback clause, is that both players were sold for basically nothing. I think Traore went for like 10 million euros, which is nothing these days, and Chalobah went for like £5 million, which is absolutely nothing. So that kind of supports the theory that there is some sort of future buyback consideration possibility, which would reduce the upfront fee. It's kind of the same. There was a thing about Thorgan Hazard, the second Hazard brother, who's still at Gladbach. Somebody was asking him about, does he know if there's a buyback clause in his deal, and he doesn't even know if his own contract has a buyback clause. So there you go. Maybe nobody ever really knows anything about this, but yeah, Thorgan, who is 24, is having so far a career season in Germany. So, and his contract is up in about 18 months. So suddenly those buyback rumors are picking up once again, even though it's been like 3 years since he left. So there you go. Yeah, my Confather poster over here. It's actually a canvas, if you want to get fancy. It's not even just a poster. Nope, turns out I didn't even point to it, but everybody can see it. All right, good deal. Conte is a good coach, but general manager is a problem. Very, very foolish. Well, we don't have a GM right now. We don't have a director of football. Good old Michael Emenalo resigned a couple of weeks ago, as was the big story during the international break. And yeah, who knows what's going to happen there. The one exciting, interesting rumor that we saw was the guy who built the Monaco teams over the last few years, a guy named Luis Campos, I want to say, is supposedly not too happy at his current job in Lille, and so there's a big rumor that Chelsea may be possibly bringing him as a director of football. Yeah, other names that have been tossed around for this job are basically all ex-players. Somebody like Frank Lampard, Didier Drogba, I don't know, Michael Ballack, Andrea Pirlo, people who know something about talent or football, whether they be whether they have the qualifications to be a director of football is highly questionable, at least as far as I'm concerned. I'm sure many people will say, well, Michael Emenalo didn't have any qualifications to be director of football either. And you might be right, but he still had more than Lampard and Drogba and Pirlo and Ballack combined. Emenalo was scout, or the opposition scout, and then like a head of scouting at Chelsea for 4 years before being named director of football, and before even signing on as a scout, he ran or helped run a talent academy in Arizona, in Tucson, was it? Working with the under 12s, under 14s, boys and girls. So he had at least some experience in what it in doing this job. And it'd be pretty cool to have somebody like Lampard or Drogba back in this position, but I'm not really sure that's such a wise thing to throw him in at the deep end. And then the other thing you have to consider, I think, is if we are to believe stories like Emenalo being trusted enough to be able to kind of be a voice of reason in the boardroom, or when there's football discussions behind the scenes, and like Abramovich is like, we gotta fire this guy, he's terrible, he lost 2 games in a row, and like this manager, he's terrible, we should sign, I don't know, whoever is the biggest name in football right now. Like, somebody needs to be a bit of voice of reason. I'm sure Emenalo was as much of a yes man as any of them back there, but there are some reports that he was like the voice of reason, the football, the guy who had some football knowledge in that back room, and be able to talk some sense and some reason into people at times. So, expecting Lampard or Drogba, club legends as they may be, to be able to like exert that much influence, I think is a bit optimistic, because they really have no weight of accomplishments, no resume, no CV to rely upon to lend their opinion some weight. Who knows? That's just my rambling on this topic. But so right now we're without a director of football, which means that Granovskaya wields all the power. So maybe a good thing, bad thing, I don't know, but we probably need somebody else in there to at least have her bounce off ideas off of, and have a little active conversation. I think if Morata was physical, then he would have scored more goals. What is your view? I think Morata is plenty physical, but he seems to want to go down very easily, and that's fine. I mean, Drogba wasn't exactly without a reputation, let's put it that way. But Morata just needs to make it look better, first of all. He's a bit like Ivanovic, where like when he flops to the ground, when he goes to ground, it just never doesn't quite look right. And and you're practicing the dark arts of this of trying to win free kicks and fouls. You gotta make it look good. You gotta be like Willian. You gotta sell it. You gotta make sure the referee knows what's happening here. Don't look like this big lump who just kind of just crumples to the ground. You gotta act it up a little bit. So maybe needs some practice, and obviously he needs to get used to the Premier League generally not being as generous with calls as Spanish League or even the Italian League. I think if he does work on his physicality, I think he will score even more goals than he already will as he is right now. It was a bit weird to see him come on in last night's game against Qarabag just because I thought the idea was to rest him. So to put him on for 25 minutes kind of goes against that. It's also something that was entirely not needed. We were already up 2-0. Was it? Yeah, 2-0, 3-0, whatever it was. So really, there's very little benefit to gain at that point. I mean, maybe he scores a goal or two, but I mean, who cares? He's already our leading scorer. He's already setting all these records for having contributed to more goals in his first 11 Premier League games than anybody else in Chelsea history. So like, he should not be struggling for confidence. So really, by putting him on for 25 minutes, there's only downsides. He could get hurt, he get injured, get a kick or two. He stayed down at the just before the final whistle, and I was like, oh, here you go. We put on Morata, and suddenly he got a kick to his Achilles, and now he's out for 2 months. Fortunately, that didn't seem to be the case, but he did miss several chances. So, I mean, some of those were just pretty bad. Very Torres-like, if we are to paint the devil on the wall, so to speak. Hopefully he got those out of his system before Saturday's game, because there's a couple pretty shocking misses there from Morata. Certainly, like, instead of putting on Morata, certainly somebody like Sterling. So, it's a couple nice. Who else was an unused substitute here? That was it. Bakayoko and Christensen were the other two unused. That's fine. But yeah, I mean, you would think somebody like Sterling could have come on easily for Hazard or Conte, whatever. So yeah, that Morata move was a bit weird. And he certainly didn't look too strong, let's put it that way, since we started talking about his physicality. I think within 3 steps of his appearance, he was already on the ground and complaining about a free kick. So maybe not the best way to go about things. Yeah. Morata is good, he just needs more time to play his physical game. Yeah, I mean, it's going to come with practice and time, hopefully exposure. Certainly, he's shown to be able to handle the physicality of the league. Now, I'm not sure what the switch is. Sometimes he reverts to this habit of just going to ground every time he feels contact or whatever, and looking for the foul. And sometimes he stays on and bullies the players out of his way. He's certainly pretty tremendous in the air, and that seems to be he seems to be more comfortable being physical in the air, I think, than balls played to his feet. But you gotta be able to do both. I mean, you can be successful doing just one, obviously, because Costa was terrible in the air and was very good with his feet, and it's kind of the reverse situation with Morata. Just in terms of physicality, I mean, Morata has really good feet. He just is less physical with them, so to say, than when the ball's in the air. Yeah. That's my spiel on Morata here. All right, we've been here for almost an hour, even longer than I imagined at the beginning we would have been. Number of misses Morata is a bit concerning. It's a consistent occurrence in his matches. Yeah, in a way it is. I mean, all strikers miss chances. What seems to be the habit for Morata, I don't know if it's habit. I don't know if habit's the right word. But so far he's been able to convert chances when it counts, so to say. In big games, like that goal against United. So hopefully it was more of like a concentration issue today. We were already up 2-0 or 3-0, and a coach puts you on for the last 25 minutes against this side who are down to 10 men, and like, are obviously defeated and deflated, and the last thing they want to do is play this game. Everybody just wants to go home, and the coach puts you on and says, "Go run out there and score some goals. Get some, son." And you're just not really motivated to do anything. You're just like, all right, coach, fine, I'll do it. And then you miss a couple of chances, and it's kind of like, did we really have to do this? All right. So anyway, back to the game. 4-0, second 4-0 in a row for Chelsea. The first 10-15 minutes was pretty even, and then that red card to Sadikov changed everything. I mean, I'm okay with the red card. If the referee is going to call that foul, he has to give the red card because it was last man, and it was a pull or a push. He was not playing. The defender was not playing the ball. I've seen many replays. I've yet to be convinced either way. I was pretty certain that Willian just won the penalty, so to speak, i.e. dove. I mean, there's contact. On some replays, you can see the defender drag Willian's arm back, but then Willian also falls forward. He doesn't fall back. He loses his balance, obviously, for whatever reason, but Willian's also pushing off of the defender. I mean, I don't know. It's one of those where Willian obviously went to ground and left the decision up to the referee. It wasn't clear-cut like the second one was. And the referee gave the foul and gave the red card, and that was basically game. So it was a big moment, and it went in our favor. This doesn't happen very often. It should be pointed out. So I suppose we should just take it and move on. It was a big moment, and we made it count. We still had to score the penalty and then score a couple more goals after that to break the home side's resistance. Who now have had a guy sent off in 3 straight Champions League games, so it's becoming a bit of a habit for them, we could say. So it's once Hazard scored that penalty, and then Willian scored his first goal, which actually, if you're going to watch any of the goals from this game, make it the second one, Willian's first, which was a rather glorious team move, even if it was just against 10 men, with Fabregas starting, and then some really nice one-touch passing between the front three of Pedro, Willian, Hazard, back to Willian, and a nice, easy, simple finish past the goalkeeper. And that made it 2, and that was it. That was 35th minute, and after that, definitely the game was over. So, in a way, it was exactly what the doctor ordered. Nice, low effort, sort of medium effort for a while, then low effort in the second half. Easy win. Back to the top of the Group C, is it? Champions League Group C. Because Roma then in the late game proceeded to lose to Atletico, who finally looked like a good team. It only took him 5 games in the Champions League to look like a good team. Atletico beat Roma 2-0 in the late game. So Chelsea are back on top of the group with 10 points. Roma second with 8, and Atletico third with 6. These are the teams that are still alive for knockout rounds. Chelsea are guaranteed a spot in the last 16. We play Atletico at home in 2 weeks for the final game, and then Roma host Qarabag in Rome as their final game. One would assume that Roma is going to beat them. So Atletico's chances of making the knockout round are pretty slim. They would require a pretty major upset of Roma by Qarabag. But first or second place is still up for grabs in the group. Chelsea are back in control, which is nice. If we beat Atletico in 2 weeks, then obviously we win the group. If we lose, and assuming that Roma beat Qarabag, then they win the group and we finish second. There's a lot of concern about Chelsea finishing second in the group. I'm not really sure it's all that concerning, just because there are good teams in other leagues and other groups finishing first and second. So, the concern is, in theory, the concern is if you finish first, your chances of getting an easier opposition in the first knockout round are better than if you finish second. So if you finish first, you're drawn against another team who finished second. And if you finish second, you're drawn against the team who finished first. And the only restriction is you can't be drawn against a team from your own country. And so the concern is that Manchester United, Liverpool, Manchester City, and Tottenham are all winning their groups, which means that if Chelsea finished second, as it would stand, our possible opponents in the knockout rounds would be PSG, Barcelona, or Besiktas. So basically you have 3 teams to choose from, and 2 of them are like, oh my god, here we go. But if you finish first, then suddenly you have more options. You could face Basel or Bayern or Juventus or Sevilla or Shakhtar or Porto or Real Madrid. So obviously there are still some pretty bad draws there. I mean, imagine finishing first and then you get drawn against Real Madrid. I mean, that's pretty sucky right there. That's not a reward for anything, let alone winning the group. But that's just how it goes. But then obviously, you possibly could face Porto or Shakhtar or other. I mean, there's no easy teams left. Basel, Basel just beat Manchester United, but that's mostly just to give Mourinho something to complain about. There are easier teams. There are not easy teams. There are no easy teams left once you get to the knockout rounds. But there are easier options than possibly having to choose between PSG and Barcelona right away. So that's the bit of motivation there, I guess, to finish first in the group. And just generally, winning is a habit, and you want to win all the games. So there you go. When Atletico come to Stamford Bridge in 2 weeks, if we win, then we finish first, and we give ourselves a better chance of being drawn against not scary opposition, not too scary opposition, I guess. So that's some motivation there for that. But before then, we will play no less than 3 games. Liverpool away this Saturday, which is like 48 hours, which is ridiculous. But it is what it is. I mean, Conte will continue to complain about it, but it's not really a Chelsea issue. It's an FA issue where the English FA continues to insist on not giving English teams in Europe any favors whatsoever, and then they continue to wonder why English teams barely ever make the latter rounds these days. Perhaps it's because you have to play so many games within such short amount of time. So Liverpool on Saturday, and then Swansea, and then Newcastle. So that's all. It's all coming up. Games every 3-4 days from now until eternity, or at least early January. So need players back, needs players healthy. Right now, there's 4 players who are out injured or were out injured for this game. Kennedy has some sort of minor muscle injury thing. Musonda has this mystery knee injury. Batshuayi has an ankle sprain, whatever, and he's going to be out for like 2 more weeks. And then Moses is still recovering from his hamstring injury, but he should be back for Saturday, hopefully, and ready to start on the right wing back as usual. So hopefully that'll give Zappacosta a rest. Yeah, broadcast money, as Binay says. I mean, there's your true overlord right there. If if you're looking for who to blame for this some of this ridiculous scheduling in the English Premier League, it's all the billions that Sky and BT and whoever else controls game time is giving the clubs. So it's not something that's easily solvable. Unfortunately, I don't think. Um, it's something that kind of all clubs have to deal with at one point or another. Sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you don't. Chelsea got pretty lucky with the scheduling last year, especially through the holiday period. This year, well, we're not getting very lucky so far anyway. So maybe it'll even out or something. But I just have to eventually you just have to make use of a good use of a bad situation or whatever. Hope Salah doesn't score against us. Yeah, Mo Salah is the leading scorer of the Premier League. Did not see that coming. Even if Salah had success in Serie A, it's I don't know. I didn't think he could play that same game, same style in England and be as successful, if not more successful. There he is. So that kind of sucks. The best player in the league, a former Chelsea player, the leading scorer in the league, a former Chelsea player. If you want to get upset about things, there you go. plenty of fuel for that fire. I was impressed by Willian last night. Conte should give the boy more time to play, says Paul from Zambia. Willian, certainly a hand in all 4 goals. That doesn't happen very often. 2 goals scored and 2 penalties won. One more obvious than the other. Second penalty was pretty obvious, and that's an incredibly stupid foul. That was just right in front of the referee. He pulled his shirt so far back you could practically see it separate from his body. You just don't do that. That's dumb defending. But yeah, impressed by Willian last night. It is just Qarabag, unfortunately. But Willian actually has a pretty long streak of appearances. He hasn't started too many games, but he's almost always a substitute off the bench. I don't know if that's gonna satisfy him long term, but it's good to have good options off the bench like Willian. So I think that's a pretty good solution for us right now. Anyway, I think we should go ahead and wrap this up. So last night or earlier today, depending, since it's still 11:30 here on the West Coast, Chelsea beat Qarabag 4-0. Goals from Hazard, a brace from Willian, and a penalty from Cesc Fabregas. For the 4 goals, another clean sheet. It's Chelsea's 5th win in 6 games and like the 4th clean sheet, I think, in 5 games. So other than that, whatever happened against Roma last time, if we ignore that, it's not a bad streak that Chelsea are slowly building here. More wins. We are currently riding a 4-game win streak in the Premier League. So that's gonna be tested very strongly, so to say, and Liverpool this weekend. That's Saturday, and it's the late kickoff, so 5:30 local, 12:30 on the East Coast in the US, 9:30 Pacific. I don't know any other time zones, but yeah, it's not going to be an easy game. Let's put it that way. Liverpool aren't. They're only 5th at the moment, which is probably doesn't really satisfy them, but they've kind of put their struggles of September and October behind them. There was a point from September through mid-October where they won 1 game out of 9, and that was a 3-2 against Leicester City. They went 1 win, 2 losses, and 5 draws. Yep. So it's 8 games. It was 1 win in 8 games. So that streak is basically done now. They're currently on a 5-game unbeaten streak. And even though they gave up 3 late goals to Sevilla on Tuesday, which was kind of funny, they're scoring lots of goals. They've scored at least 3 goals in each of their last 5 games. And they're not really conceding too many goals either, suddenly, which used to be their Achilles heel. at least until Tuesday night. So maybe that was just a blip there where they could play defense. But yeah, Liverpool. It's going to be a tough proposition. They've won their last 3 home games 3-0 each time. Yeah, sorry, it wasn't kind of funny. It was hilarious. And yeah, that's. I mean, I guess it wasn't that late because Sevilla scored two goals before the hour mark in the second half, but then they scored the equalizer with at the 90th minute. So I mean, anytime that happens, just laugh and laugh. But yeah, it's gonna be a tough game. Certainly not like Qarabag, not like West Brom. Probably more like Manchester United, but way different. I don't think the last thing Liverpool are going to do is park the bus. So this might be high scoring. It might be high tempo. It's certainly going to be exciting and on the edge of your seat. So get ready for that. Stock up on lots of beer, and we'll try to get through it together. So if you watched any part of this silly video, I thank you very much. If you watched all of it, then you rule. And we will talk to you after the Liverpool game, which again is Saturday, late kickoff, 5:30 p.m. local time. So hope to see you there, and thanks for watching. Bye.